You've done the impossible. You've crossed over 1 million a year in revenue, a goal that you set and you probably never even realized you could even hit. And now everything is breaking. In this episode, we're going to walk through the third pain line, or the fourth pain line, the fourth business growth level, and exactly how you can grow through this growth level and the pain line, the scale process pain line that you're experiencing right now. So we're going to dive into the business growth levels here. And once again, I'm taking you on this journey in these first episodes here in the Entrepreneur Freedom Formula about the business growth levels. Okay, we've already gone through growth level 1, 2, 3, and now we're going through the fourth. And this fourth one is 1 million to 3 million in revenue. Okay, in the last episode, we worked through 300,000 to 1 million, and kind of give you a reminder if you're just seeing this video for the first time. Things break in businesses at 3s and 10s. The first time I ever heard that concept was back in 2008 or so from Clayton Mask, an amazing software entrepreneur. And at that time, I didn't have the context. It sounded like a cool concept, but I didn't have the context. And now that I've gone through, cross over the $10 million mark and growing from there, it's like, oh my gosh, these are all so true. And so in this series, I'm essentially breaking down from my business growth levels a process that I've created, exactly what you're probably feeling and exactly the moves that you need to make to grow to that next level. And so if you have an aspiration to grow over that $3 million mark and stay there and go towards 10, you're gonna have to solve the things that I'm talking about in this episode here today. Okay. So at this spot, the main thing that you're probably going to be experiencing is, like I said, things are going to feel like they're breaking everywhere. You probably have some employees by this point. You're doing 1 million or 1.5 or 2 or 3, or maybe you only have 1 or 2 people working for you and you're capped out at 1.5 million or 1.7 or 2, and you're wondering, why am I stuck? And usually the symptom is you got to a certain point and then things started to go like this, and then eventually maybe even they slide backwards. And one thing that's really, really common is we oftentimes blame those slides on the market. We say, well, the market's shifted, or, well, this thing happened. And that's the case, but I want us to all remember that in those markets that are shifting, other businesses are growing. Like someone figured out how to start a business and how to grow a business past your business during that same phase. And so, yes, while a market can impact us, it's because we didn't do certain things during these growth phases to prepare us for those changes. And so I want to make sure that, yes, those things can impact our business. We should look at them. But you can also grow through these when we manage them effectively and we look ahead. Okay, so what does it mean that you're hitting this pain line of scaling process? Well, at this spot, you need to move from the performer identity into what I call the builder identity. The performer identity in the previous phase, the 300K to $1 million, like that person is the person who shows up and you're just killing it with these things. You're killing it with marketing. You're killing it with sales. You are the breadwinner. You're bringing the money in, right? And in that early phase to even get to 2 or 3 million or 1 million, you had to learn how to delegate some things. Okay, you had to learn how to delegate some of the basic things and maybe even replace yourself in a key area. Where I find it when someone gets stuck at 1.2, 1.5, 1.7 is usually because they have not replaced themselves in that key revenue driving area that drains their energy. Okay, it's because you didn't add on that second sales rep who is killer and better than you, so you can now focus on growing in the area that you're the best at. Okay, so you're holding that business back. Or it's because you didn't replace yourself on some key marketing parts and you're not driving the business forward there as much because you're spread too thin. Okay, or at this phase, you might have 3 or 4 people working for you, all delivering certain tasks, but you don't really have a manager who's really driving that forward and driving the results and the operations of that on a daily basis. So you're stuck in the center of this wheel. It's almost like you have a wheel and there's all these spokes coming out of it, and you're delegating all these things, all these tasks out, but you don't really have someone owning the outcome of those tasks, just the delivery of the task. And what happens when you delegate something is it gets kicked back to you. You delegate project A to Sally, and Sally then kicks it back to you for review. Great, that works great if you have 1 or 2 people. But what happens if you're doing 2 or 3 million a year in revenue and you've got 4 people, 5 people, 6 people maybe that are working for you? It could be VAs, could be full-time employees, and you get up towards 7 or 8, all of a sudden all these things are bouncing back to you all the time, and you don't have the time to do the things that you enjoy the most and that drive the business forward. You're just busy trying to field requests and help, approve projects and work on projects with your team. Okay. So in this phase here, you need to document and scale repeated delivery. So whatever it is that you do in your business, if you're a real estate flipper, if you're a real estate agent, you need to document and scale repeated delivery. So if you lock down a listing, how do you now fulfill that listing? Okay. Is there a process that once the client signs a listing agreement, what happens next? Do they get put in the CRM? Okay. What happens next? Who contacts title? Who does this? Who does that? Well, document those and now plug somebody in to run that system so you can do the parts that provide revenue, that drive revenue. Okay. Or if you're a house flipper, you purchase the property, you purchase the house, what happens next? Okay, who creates the bid sheets for the costs on the renovation? Who gets a hold of this person? Who does this? Who markets the property? Document all those things and start to scale that process out so you can focus on revenue generation and then holding the high standard and bar for delivery side of it. Okay. And in this phase, like I said, the identity is builder. So what does it even mean to be a builder? What does it mean to have the identity of a builder? Well, when we're in performer phase, we're just fine putting our heads down and just hitting the next sale, hitting the next call, hitting the next sale, hitting the next call, driving the new ad campaign, whatever it is, coming up with a new offer. Well, now we need to build systems and process because to get to 3 million, get to 10, you need a team of some sort usually. And to have a team all rowing in the same direction, they need to be clear. They need to be clear why you're doing what you're doing, which is your vision and mission. They need to be clear where you're going, which is that strategy and the plan and how you're going to get there. Okay, which is your roadmap. They need to be clear on those things. We need to start to build the parts of our business that help it to actually be a business now, not just this income opportunity with a bunch of activities built off of your shoulders. Okay, and the purpose that we start to feel during this phase is, man, we crossed over $1 million in revenue. We're celebrating. We might be making a little bit more money. But what usually happens from the $1 to $3 million mark is your margins get squeezed a little bit. Okay, where you might have had a really high profit margin at 600,000 because you have to grow, you have to replace yourself in some key areas. Maybe that sales rep is good, but they're not converting at the rate that you were. Okay, maybe that marketer is really good, but maybe it's 10% below your skill set there. Okay, maybe this person's really good, but we have to be okay with someone being 80% as good as us at some of these key areas. Okay. And so you're going to start to find some of those results kind of a little bit softer than when you were doing them. You're going to find because you now maybe you have an office or you have some more expenses, or you have a few employees, your margins are going down a little bit. Your take home percentage might be a little bit down, but that's because you're investing into the growth of the company. Okay. That's normal. And so what our purpose usually is during this phase is freedom. We're going, I built this business so I could have freedom. And it feels like I might be in a phase where the business is kind of trapping me a little bit. It feels like I'm walking in mud. And usually during that phase, that's the telltale thing is 1 to 3 million. You're walking in mud. You feel like you're not making progress in the areas you want to make progress in. Okay. And the vision that we usually have there is, man, I would love a self-managing business, right? I would love if this business kind of ran itself and I was able to do the things that gives me the most energy and I made a good profit and I can employ some people well. But man, I don't want to work in this business forever. So I need to find a way to build a business that eventually, when I'm ready, can self-manage itself. You can build an asset rather than an income. That's the vision I want you to have. And that's the vision most of the time we have at that 1 to 3 million. I'm really thinking about asset now as much, if not more than income at this point. Okay. So that tends to be that first part of the entrepreneur freedom formula, the purpose bucket, is I need to shift into the identity of becoming a builder. Builder of what? Builder of systems, builder of people, builder of teams, builder of products. Okay. I need to shift into the purpose of freedom. Okay. I don't just want to have this business, but I want to have a business that sets me free, a business that doesn't run me, but where a team of amazing people run it. Right. I have a vision of a self-managing business because now I've got a greater vision where this business actually fulfills and fuels my purpose. It fuels the impact I want to make. And I can't be working in the details of this business 60 hours a week if that's going to happen. I want to build it so it self-manages. So now we take that vision, that purpose, and we need to make sure we have a business strategy around it. That's where we move into the next part of the entrepreneur freedom formula, into strategy. What does your strategy usually look like here? Well, for me, where the strategy usually starts to look like for here, and I think this applies to a lot of companies, and maybe not all, But we need to start to look at how do we now start to kind of create a little bit more of the evergreen aspects of our business. For me, what evergreen is I do something one time and it gives me a benefit for a long time. I do something one time and it pays me for a long time. I do a piece of marketing one time and I get leads for a long time. I do this health stuff for a while. I get these dividends with energy for a long, long time. I now want to start to focus on not just doing this activity like this that got me to 1 million or 2 million, but now I want to do these things that stack over time and build momentum, because that's what's going to help you get over the 10 million. Okay. With Carrot, with my company, it was really about recurring revenue. We started to change everything over to recurring revenue. And we said, okay, how do we make all of our revenue evergreen? How do we make it so we're building so much value with our client base that it's a no-brainer for them to want to invest into our software on a monthly or annual basis. Okay, it's evergreen income. When you have evergreen, you can plan. When you have evergreen, it removes a lot of stress. When you have evergreen income, it starts to build towards the future where you see the asset, where you see that you can sell this asset if you wanted to, where you see that you can really make it a self-managing business if you wanted to, because you don't need the active income of you working in it every day. Okay. So the next part of it now is the marketing side of it. Okay. With marketing, it's a little bit different. This is where you really start to need to take on an omni-channel approach. In the previous stage, the third stage, the 300K to $1 million, you're usually going to stack on that next marketing channel. So to get to $1 million, you could get there in 2 channels. If you're in a big market, you can get to $1 million in revenue with one killer marketing channel in one product. Okay, you're doing wholesaling or you're doing flipping with this one marketing channel. You can get to $1 million in a big market. But to get to 3, you might need to really stack and go omni-channel. Okay, you're gonna maybe do direct mail and radio and TV, or you're gonna do direct mail and you're gonna do SEO and PPC, or you're gonna do blah, right? You're gonna stack those channels. Those channels now are what's gonna fuel you to that chance to get to 10 million, because to get to 3 to 10 is a much bigger jump than 1 to 3. And the way you get to 3 to 10, or one of the ways, and we'll talk about it on the next video in detail, is you need to have an amazing marketing and sales machine to get there. And it can't be built off of your back solely. Okay, so omni-channel marketing is going to be a key in this phase. And now, how do you get leverage in this phase? How do you get leverage? Well, you really now start to think about team. Okay, rather than everything being me, I got to take this on, I'm the performer, I'm going to make those calls, I'm going to do this. Now we start to say, how do we now build a team in the core areas? And the place I would usually start to build a team in, the first thing by this time is you're going to have an executive assistant. You're probably going to have someone helping with some marketing things, and you're probably going to have a salesperson or 2. Okay. Now you could have a slightly different team than that, but that's likely approximately about what it's going to be. Now, if you're in software, you're going to have those plus someone helping you with product, right? It's going to be an engineer or something like that. But now once we get to 1 to 3, the team that we need to look at, I usually start with the area that you have the least expertise in, that gives you the least energy. You need to bring in your first real manager. Okay, so with me, with Carrot, I love doing customer support because I love connecting with my clients. But the challenge is I couldn't be in there 8 hours a day doing support, and it also drained my energy being in there 8 hours a day. But I would love to kind of dive in and be in there for an hour and then pop back out and go do my work, because it helped me learn about our clients, learn about the challenges our clients are going through. It gave me context. It gave me the power and kind of the juice to be able to be even more motivated on the daily basis for why we're doing what we're doing. Okay. But I had to go find a manager of someone who would lead the support team. So by this time, we had a few support reps. I was leading that team. We had a sales rep who I could, who delegated the daily sales to. And now by this time, I'm like, I really need to focus on growing the marketing machine and nailing our product. And so I brought in my first manager. And that's usually where that first real manager comes in. And a manager is someone who manages between, let's say, 2 to 3 different people. It's 2 to 3 people or more. It could be 2 to 5, 2 to 6, but it's going to be over 2 who are doing the same type of activity. Their job is to come in and just ensure delivery of that activity well on a daily, weekly basis. Okay. So you're probably going to have your first manager at that point, and you're going to get leverage by building a real team now, not just a bunch of people reporting back to you. So now that we've got some more momentum moving on the consistent profit side of things, we said I'm going to start to stack on some things in my revenue model that are evergreen. Or if you're a real estate agent or an investor, you might be saying I'm going to start to stack on some rental properties or something that is starting to build up some passive or semi-passive income. Okay, that's going to be what helps you build that long-term freedom on the income side. And now we're like, okay, I'm busy again, right? So I've delegated this thing. I'm trying to learn how to manage a manager now. I'm stretching myself on the growth side of things. Now I need to dive deep over here into the marketing side or sales or product or whatever it is you're wanting to dive deep on. You're learning how to delegate more and more things as you go, but now you have more people reporting back to you. And so you're like, oh my gosh, what do I need to do to buy back energy and time now? Okay, so in the energy bucket, where we really need to be between the 1 and 3 million is now we need to kind of pull out a little bit of that schedule and we need to add some thinking time to our schedule. Okay, now what does that mean? What does thinking time mean? In order to go to 10 million, you need to get strategic again. Okay, what got you to $1 million is you had a strategy that you dialed in to get to 300K, and you amplified that strategy that got you to $1 million. Okay, but to get to 10 million, we need to really think strategically. What's the next product? What's the next market? What's the next move I need to make that's going to really scale this thing up into 8 figures? So we need to start to get used to pulling back and giving ourselves the margin to think, the margin to strategize. And what I'd suggest here is once a week, grab a 2-hour time block at the start and just literally put on their thinking time. And what do you do during thinking time? I usually kind of collect some thoughts over the week in my phone, just on Apple Notes. But honestly, if you do thinking time right, whatever you need to work on, your mind will automatically surface. Okay, so what I'll oftentimes do during thinking time is I'll either go for a walk or a run or a workout, or I'll be right out here with my coach in our gym, and he'll set up the massage table and he'll turn on some meditation music and he'll get the massage gun out and I'll do a 30-minute massage. And all of a sudden, all these topics start to pop up and your brain just starts to self-solve. It starts to dive into these. And by the end of that 30-minute meeting, I'm more clear. And it's usually not on the tactical stuff that I'm trying to deal with. It's usually up a couple levels in strategy. So give yourself some thinking time, and that's going to help reinvigorate some energy for you. So you're pulling a little bit out of that daily chaos that you might be feeling right now. Okay, so what processes do we need to start to work on here now? Well, because you're going to be building a team, and it might be a person or 2 or 3 or 4 people during this phase. You need to learn how to hire, because one of the biggest challenges you're going to experience is when you start to hire is hiring the wrong people. Okay, and oftentimes people rush to hires. I've got a process called the high confidence hiring process. We'll do some YouTube videos on here about that soon. Check it out. Hit subscribe to make sure you get them. But my high confidence hiring process is a 3 distinct phase process. I can tell you the very first person that I hired outside my executive assistant came from a Craigslist post. Okay, they were my customer support rep. And that person was a great person. They ended up not being able to really grow with us because we found that they weren't a great culture match at its core. Okay, at their core, they weren't an amazing culture match. At their skill set, they nailed the skill set. Okay, but I didn't know how to hire. And so we made some hiring mistakes early on. We also had some really, really good hiring wins early on, but it was all by accident. It was all by mistake. And so one of the first processes that I would start to document is the basics of hiring. Okay, how are you going to hire? How are you going to find the right people? How are you going to do a test project, have test projects done correctly? And we teach that in my high confidence hiring process. And then when someone gets hired, how do you actually train them and onboard them well to make sure that they're successful? Those are key. Okay, so spend some real time on that, because now you have a manager who's managing. So you need to make sure that you're giving that person good skill sets to be able to follow. So if they ever take over hiring, or for sure they're right now already taking over managing somebody, that they're doing it well, and you don't feel like you've got to fly in there and help them out. Okay. Now the other part of process that we need to get put in place is the cadence. Okay. So what is the cadence? The cadence is basically how you operate your business. If you are familiar with EOS or Traction, they're amazing models, and EOS uses something called level 10s. And some other sessions too. But what your cadence is essentially this. It's on an annual basis. You are looking at your 3 to 5 year strategy or vision, whatever you want to call it. And you're saying, cool, from this, what are my priorities for this year, and what are my goals, and what are my projects? Bam. Once a year, you do a 1 or 2 day retreat looking at your vision, and then you're going to start to make your plan and then refine it over the coming weeks after that. Maybe do that in October, November, December, depending on how big your business is. If you're a small business and you're in this phase, start it in December. Okay, end of November at the earliest. If you're bigger and you're 10 million plus, you might be starting this in August or September, even October. Okay, the next thing then, as part of the cadence, is the quarterlies. So have in your calendar every single quarter where you do a quarterly reset or quarterly sync or whatever you want to call it, where you pull up your annual plan, you look at your goals, and that might be a half day. Okay. It could be a 1 day. It could be whatever you want to do there. But you're going, cool. How are we doing? Red, yellow, greens. How are we doing? And then reprioritize for that next quarter. Okay. And then I like to do a monthly. Not everyone likes to do a monthly, but when the month starts, part of my cadence is I pull up the company goals, I pull up our projects, I pull up my goals, and then I make my priorities for the month. Okay. And then we'll do weekly and daily. So the weekly for the company now is a weekly sync, you can call it that, or a level 10 with EOS. And that's a once a week, you're getting together with that team. You're going to share some wins. You're going to pull up projects in red, yellow, green, those projects. How are we doing on them? You're going to pull up that scorecard. How are we doing towards our goals? And then with EOS, you're going to pull up what they call IDS, identify, discuss, and solve. And that's the way that your team can bring challenges to the table and you guys can work through them together and make decisions. Okay, the reason I'm bringing this up, and we're going to go into all those in crazy detail here on my YouTube channel, so hit subscribe. The reason I'm bringing those up is because now that you're starting to build a team, that team needs clarity. That team needs clarity in where you're going, why you're doing that. How does this project connect to that strategy? How does this project connect to helping us get here? How does this project help connect to the vision? How does my work matter? Where does my work connect into that vision in the first place? And before, when you were 1, 2, or 3 people, everybody had a direct line right to you on a daily basis, and you could just speak it to them. But now that you might be 5 people or 6 people or 8 people or 10 people, not everyone has that direct daily connection to you. If they did, you couldn't get your work done. So now you're working through a manager or two, and you need to make sure that everything is aligned all the way down, and that's what your cadence does. Okay. Now, the last thing, guys, on the energy buyback in time is delegate. What do you delegate? At this phase, what I like to delegate is now you're starting to delegate projects. Now, you probably already started to delegate projects before this, but what does it mean to delegate projects versus tasks? Same thing, guys. We're going to be putting a lot of content in this channel. I'm going to be doing my delegation matrix on here to walk you through the differences of tasks and projects and strategy and results. And so at this phase, you're probably still driving the strategy. You're probably still driving the main moves you're making in the business, and you have a team of people around you to execute the delivery of those things. And so what you need to start to get used to now is find that 1 or 2 people in your company who are just really, really good at organizing a project, at organizing the steps, at hitting a deadline, at being accountable to moving things forward. Go find that person. Go find that person and bring them in. And now where you used to be the person that was driving those things forward, have that person be your partner, kind of your integrator. It could be your executive assistant. It could be someone else in another part of the company that you just see as showing up on a daily basis in an amazing way. Okay. And now you're going to start to map these things out, and you're going to have that partner come in, have them help you map the project out, and now have them report how those projects are doing on a weekly basis. So you can just review how those most important projects are doing that you're not the most connected to. Okay, that's going to help you get more scale there, more leverage to really enable you to move past that 3 million. So guys, hopefully this video kind of give you some insights into that $1 to $3 million phase. You know, the phase where you need to shift from the identity of performer into builder. And in my coaching program, Epic, this is the single most common phase that's the most challenging. It's like, if I were to give the two, it's people get stuck at 300,000 to 500,000 a year, and then people get stuck at like 1.8 million a year, 1.5 million a year. And where those people get stuck, they get stuck because they haven't mastered that next way of showing up. And you need to really shift into the builder. Have that thinking time, ask the question, what's draining my energy the most? What are the things that drain my energy and drive the business forward revenue-wise? And on a monthly basis, write down those things and say, I need to replace myself in this over this next quarter. And document it, record it, document yourself doing that thing, and now bring in somebody to run that part for you, and then have them report how they're doing on that on a weekly basis with the cadence. That's why the cadence is so important here. because you can't just delegate something off and assume or hope that it's getting done right. We need to delegate it off, but now have a plug-in point for that team to be able to connect with you and you to connect with them so we can all move towards the same thing together. All right, guys, if you want these business growth levels or my entrepreneur freedom formula, go to trevormauch.com/freedom. That's Trevor, MAUCH.com/freedom. And if you're enjoying this series, if you're enjoying this podcast, hit subscribe. And what I want to ask you to do right now too is I want, if you've been enjoying this at all, if you've gotten any value at all from this episode on YouTube or in the podcast, not only subscribe as step one of the payment. Okay, I'm not going to ask you for any dollars. I'm going to ask you for an action for payment here. And then step two, I want you to leave a review or a comment wherever you're listening or watching this. If you're watching this on YouTube, pop in a comment below. What do what is the biggest pain point you're currently experiencing in your business? Are you in this phase? Are you in a phase 4 of my business growth levels? Or are you in a different phase? And what's your single biggest pain point? I'm going to read every single comment in there, and we're going to be doing content on those pain points that you're putting in there. Or if you're listening to this on the podcast, leave a review. Let me know what's resonating with you. Let me know where you're loving these things. And also let me know what you'd like to hear more on these episodes as we go. All right, guys, I want to expand this movement of building businesses for freedom and impact. Okay, the ultimate goal of an entrepreneur is not money. It's complete control of your time. Money happens to help you buy that time back. All right, guys, have an amazing rest of the week. We'll see you on the next episode where we go over the $3 million to $10 million mark and how you cross over into that coveted 8% mark that less than 1% of businesses hit. All right, guys, we'll see you in the next episode.